Hello everyone, Nathaniel Gibson here and bringing to you my week 3 multimedia discussion board. Today I will be sharing with you 3 concepts in political economy from our book chapters this week, and then 3 concepts in political economy from the videos this week as well. So examining the concepts from the book chapters in economics of the public sector first, Stiglitz and Rosengard in Chapter 6, page 139, describe market-based solutions as mechanisms used by the government to achieve socially efficient levels of resource allocations. And this is accomplished through the use of fines or taxation, government-provided subsidies, and marketable permits, such as the use of or the limits on the amount of pollutants emitted by companies. This is a concept I believe is unnoticed by most Americans. Not many people are aware that the government regulates the amount of organic waste that is produced by cities in order to actually curb pollution. If you were to ask several people, I think, about what services or goods are regulated by the government, their first answer would probably not be recycling. An example of this in 2014, Governor Jerry Brown signed Assembly Bill 1826, which introduced new limits on the tonnage amount of organic waste which could be disposed by municipalities based on the amount of businesses in the local communities. And this also introduced new fines on the cities and businesses which were non-compliant with the timeframes of the bill's implementation schedule. The next concept comes from Chapter 7 of our textbook on page 186 and examines the trade-offs that occur in government decision-making. It is basically the factoring that occurs when an agency evaluates the impact of the decisions or programs and projects that it has for the community. Take, for example, the division of police community watch efforts. A police department might want to increase the patrols that it has among business centers or highways, which might have high crime areas, but that might also come at the cost of decreased protection among home communities. So there's a trade-off decision happening in this circumstance. The third concept that I am discussing from the book is the problem that is faced by many administrators and elected officials, and that is determining preference revelation. Stiglitz and Rosengard on page 231 examine how government administrators find that it is increasingly difficult to determine what preference their communities have for specific goods and services, and really how the governing body should spend its money. And popular opinion says that government is operating under a huge deficit, which is less common at the local level, but in reality, the trade-offs to reducing government spending are not really considered when asked about how government should spend its money. And government administrators and elected officials will tend to work together to build, for example, a sales tax initiative for a city that hopefully will bring tangible benefits to a town's services and improvements to the overall functions of the city departments. But if you were to ask a citizen if they were willing to pay or buy more fire trucks for the local fire department, there might be a different influence in considering whether the benefit is worth the associated cost by introducing the sales tax. Moving on to the videos now, my next concept is the concept of negative externalities. And the AC/DC economics video shows negative externalities to be the costs that are spilled over and which impact someone other than the original producer or the intended consumer in a market transaction. And public awareness of some externalities, negative ones in particular, is higher than others. Cigarettes, which is an example used in the video, is a negative externality that is more obvious to some than exploding cow fart, kind of like in this image here. Look, the cow is even sticking his tongue out at us too. In reality, though, pollutants from factories can have negative effects and spillover costs on the environment and communities nearby. The second video reviewed was the Debts and Deficits Crash Course Economics video. And in this video, they describe deficits as being the spending that exceeds the revenues in an annual budget, and debts as the accumulation of all those deficits added up over time. The general public, I believe, is well aware that the federal government is operating under ballooning debt accumulation, and inflation and spending continue to go up. The outlook isn't too bad for the US, though, considering its Medicare costs and low interest rates on the money it borrows. These all point to easier debt payoff. However, I believe that the Social Security program is a debt that has expenditures which will outpace its revenues within the next decade, which really could spell problems for the debt balloon in the future. And not often heard of within budget definitions is the budget surplus, which the state of California actually had in its 2020 annual report prepared by Governor Newsom. And the surplus comes almost as a benefit of the coronavirus, since revenues continued like normal, even though external costs were reduced as a result of quarantined communities. There was also a huge amount of federal aid coming into the state, which also adds to the state's revenues. And so the third video that I reviewed included the concept of hyperinflation, and this comes from the Crash Course Economics video of recession and hyperinflation and stagnation, among other things. But hyperinflation really is a scary concept if you think about it, and it consists of a country's inflation rate rising above 50% per month. And in the history of the U.S. economy, it has avoided hyperinflation problems, and I think that national awareness of the concept is low in America because of the fact that we've never struggled with it in America or the U.S. economy, but around the world it's much more widely known. An example of hyperinflation other than the ones that was used in the Crash Course video, perhaps probably the worst hyperinflation incident ever was the incident in Hungary after at the end of World War II. And this incident was similar to the one in Germany, the incident that they used as an example, because it was a result of the requirement to pay reparations to the allies that Hungary had for the war that had just ended. And in the year 1946, economists estimate that the inflation rate for Hungary reached 41.9 quadrillion % per month. That's an insane amount of inflation for the Hungarian note at the time. During this period, the prices were believed to double every 15 hours in Hungary. It was so out of control that the government had to issue an entirely new currency for tax and postal payments to try to curb the rising inflation rates. By August of 1946, only after a few months, the total value of all of the Hungarian notes that were in circulation in the economy was valued at just 1/10 of a United States penny. Just insane. So in conclusion, if you think about it, all of these concepts are really connected, whether it's market-based solutions or trade-offs that happen in government spending and making decisions, trying to figure out preferences for government spending, negative externalities, budget debts and deficits. these are all connected because they're all efforts by the government to try to regulate the economy and prevent different types of market failure, and as a result, hopefully avoid large-scale depression or recession type of economic crashes. And so I think if you take a look at the concepts that we're learning about, they're all connected in how the government has to use these tools as a way to try to keep the economy afloat and avoid huge problems as a result of that. So thank you for listening to my presentation. I look forward to chatting with all of you this week.